Recap. Alchemy Emperor of the Divine Dao, Chapter 835, Chapter Translator, Henyi Translations. Editor, Henyi Translations. The wind over the heavens turned cold, as if even the clouds had learned fear. In the eyes of those watching from afar, one thought hammered again and again like a bell struck in a mountain temple. Humans, how could they be so powerful until such an extent? 18 stars of shattering void tier. That was practically the ultimate battle prowess of this tier. And yet, there were actually as many as 7 people who had attained it. 7! If such figures joined forces, they could definitely rival someone with 20 stars of shattering void tier. So why? Why did trepidation still cling to their throats like a blade held sideways? Could it be that Madu Bao's battle prowess surpassed that of 20 stars? Impossible. Wu Gaoyuan and the others shook their heads, their expressions hardening as if to deny the sky itself. They absolutely could not believe that one could surpass the battle prowess limit of 20 stars. Even the descendants of divine beasts and sages could rarely achieve the battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier, let alone surpass it. Yet fear did not ask for permission to exist. We must get rid of him today. Otherwise, given the boost of power of the nation, he will only become stronger. Zuo Qifang said, his voice like iron grinding on stone. Attack! Xiao Miaoyan screamed. Her long sword flashed, blood red like a comet drenched in sunset. Then, without hesitation, she raised its edge and made a cut at her eyebrows. Her forehead broke open, and a drop of crimson blood rushed forth, thick and viscous as if it had crystallized. The moment this single drop appeared, heaven and earth were moved. Black clouds began to roll as if summoned by a silent decree, and behind them, blazing white lightning loomed, restless, watchful, ready to judge. That drop of blood was just too powerful, strong to the point of almost exceeding the limit of this realm. And because it threatened the boundary of what the lower realm could bear, heaven and earth themselves reacted. Immortal blood! Madu Bao finally showed a cautious expression. So the immortals really didn't just send 5 people down. They had also sent personal artifacts. A single drop of blood could not represent the immortals at all. Not truly, not even close. And yet, could one imagine the power of immortals' blood in this lower realm? Even one drop could make the sky grow heavy. Xiao Miaoyan began mumbling something. What she muttered could not be clearly understood, only that it was a chant, a calling, a thread thrown upward towards something far beyond mortal reach. At this moment, that drop of immortal's blood transformed into a sudden rain that splashed across her long sword. In an instant, the sword exuded an endless brilliance. Its power surged so fiercely that it could even suppress that of the mountain and river axe. Just a single drop of immortal's blood. And the sword's power was boosted to an extent where it could at least rival the real mountain and river axe. It was really too terrifying. And Xiao Miaoyan was not alone. It was the same for Zuo Qifang and the others. Each of them took out a drop of immortal's blood and smeared it on their own spirit tools. The moment the crimson touched the weapons, their auras swelled, more terrifying by several times, just as if they had taken on the body of immortals. Now, the battle prowess of these 5 people would have reached 20 stars of shattering void tier. Each one of them wouldn't be any inferior to Madu Bao. Die! The 5 people joined forces. Their movements were sharp, decisive, merciless. 5 streams of intent braided into a single killing tide. Each launched a powerful attack, and the 5 spirit tools unleashed power that surged upwards, shaking the firmament so violently that a great number of stars seemed to fall. How could this be blocked? With the power of the 5 being 20 stars of shattering void tier, even a physique of level 10 precious metal would still be slashed apart. And could Madu Bao also have the terrifying healing ability like Ling Han? If not, everything would end. Madu Bao's expression became solemn. Strong as he might be, he didn't dare to look lightly upon the battle prowess of 20 stars of shattering void tier, especially not when his opponents were as many as 5. He raised his hand, held out a finger, and gently tapped his chest as though knocking upon a sealed door. Release! Wang. In an instant, endless killing intent began circulating, thick enough to drown thought. White light erupted from his body. And now everyone could clearly see it. His exposed skin was covered with glowing patterns. Ancient, thick, and imposing, like inscriptions carved before dynasties had names. But what was even more astonishing was not merely the light. It was the killing intent that rode within it. The sight of these patterns alone could make a person's heart feel fear and their flesh shiver. People with lower cultivation levels would immediately be blinded at first sight, as if their eyes had offended a taboo. Martial intent? No. These were patterns of a formation. Ling Han had seen Yinhong brand formation patterns on her own body before. It was very practical. Using one's own body as a formation, the power of the patterns could be activated anytime for attack or defense. Yet these formation patterns on Madu Bao, they seemed as if he was born with them. So much so that Ling Han doubted that anyone could reproduce these patterns at all. They were extremely uncomfortable to the eyes just by looking at them. And that was with Ling Han having activated the Eye of Truth and circulating Sword Heart at the same time. Would ordinary shattering void tier cultivators dare to stare at such patterns? Yet if one didn't even dare to look at it, how could one reproduce these patterns? And being so complex, how could they be mastered if one had not studied them meticulously for decades, or even centuries? Born with these patterns, damn, then he would be the same as the third killing formation. In that instant, threads of past behavior snapped into place like puzzle pieces. It was no wonder that Madu Bao had shown mercy to the third killing formation previously, and that his manner of speaking had been odd. It was no wonder that the third killing formation had been so emotionally moved. It was because they were similar. They recognized each other. But then, the third killing formation had actually been scared off by a single word from Madu Bao. What did this mean? The world's first killing formation, the 5 people, including Zuo Qifang, cried out, then halted their attacks simultaneously. Horror spread across their faces like ink dropped into water. Madu Bao was unexpectedly a natural formation in human form, and the first killing formation at that. Legend had it that the first killing formation could slaughter immortals. How could the group of 5, including Zuo Qifang, not be afraid? They had yet to become immortals. Ling Han finally understood something else as well. It was no wonder that when Madu Bao had gotten on top of the martial stone, he had left behind number 1 as his name. This was not just his pride. It was also his real name, the world's first killing formation. Madu Bao moved. He dealt out a blow, and Hong, endless killing intent, roared outward. The entire realm became shrouded, as if wrapped in a burial shroud of white light. Everywhere that light swept past, space was forcefully torn open. Endless energy flowed through in disorder, colliding like raging rivers without banks, and its impact was incomparably terrifying. This was his true strength. The world's first killing formation that could slaughter immortals. The group of 5, including Zuo Qifang, were driven back, forced to stand together into a corner as if the world itself had become a wall. They joined forces to confront the attack. So what if the strongest spirit tools in the world joined forces? They were still suppressed. They could barely defend themselves. Poo, poo, poo blood splashed from their bodies as the pressure tore through their defenses. In the blink of an eye, they became heavily injured. From the side of the battlefield, the 5 great sects and the 1,000-corpse sect felt hope drain out of them like water from cracked jars. The world's first killing formation. It would kill whatever stood in its path, be it gods or Buddha. In this small realm, it was absolutely invincible. Otherwise, would it be crowned as the number 1? And then, at the peak of that slaughtering brilliance, something weird happened. From the crevice in space that Madu Bao had torn open, something emerged. It was the bow of a ship. The crevice in space was not very big, so only a tiny bit of the bow came out. But that tiny bit, that single sliver of impossible presence, was enough to make everyone weak in the knees, causing them to neatly fall from the sky as if their cultivation had been cut at the root. No one was an exception. It was the same for the group of 5, including Zuo Qifang. It was the same for the 18-eyed corpse kings, and it was the same even for Madu Bao. Peng, peng, peng. More than 100 shattering void-tier cultivators fell from the sky like dumplings, crashing down pitifully, each of them in an incomparably miserable state. The scene was actually a bit funny, because no one expected shattering void-tier cultivators could also become like this. But no one was able to laugh. Instead, Their faces showed unsurpassed horror. Everyone knew the void was the most dangerous place in the world. If one were to land within it, even the physique of level 10 precious metal would be quickly torn into pieces. And yet, it was indeed too difficult to open up the void. This could only be done by shattering void tier cultivators, thereby opening up a channel to enter into the immortal realm. Even so, shattering the void was an absolutely dangerous matter. One could easily fall to death. Even if there weren't any ambush from the Great Formation put up by the 5 Great Sects, the maximum number of cultivators of the Shattering Void tier who could successfully shatter the void was only half. Only half. But now? An entire ship was coming out through the void. This was like a myth stepped into reality. What materials could resist the destructive power of the void? In that moment, everyone lost any intention of fighting. They were only left with feelings of shock and puzzlement, as if their minds had been struck into stillness. This ship, what did it represent? Hong, hong, hong. The bow of the ship gently struck the crevice in space. It obviously didn't seem heavy, not at all. And yet, after each impact, the heavens were shaken. Even cultivators of the Shattering Void tier couldn't help but vomit blood, because this impact seemed to have directly hit their hearts, bypassing flesh and chi alike. Within Ling Han, the Black Tower vibrated gently. And yet Ling Han remained nonchalant, as if nothing had happened. So did Hu Nu. This little girl was similarly very strange. Translator Henyi Translations. Editor, Henyi Translations Hong. The sound rolled like a thunderclap across the heavens, because at last, after more than a dozen brutal strikes aimed into that stubborn crevice, the ship's bow revealed itself in full, as if some ancient beast had finally pushed its snout through a sealed gate. And the moment that prow appeared, the rest of the vessel followed without hesitation. Gravity seized it like an iron hand. The immense hull slid through the opening, dragged onward by its own weight, and then came crashing down toward the earth below. Peng! The bow struck a mountain peak first, and the peak did not break. It simply gave up. It collapsed with absurd ease, like a pile of sand and loose stones that could not withstand even a single touch. At the same instant, the great protective formation that had stood proud moments before proved practically useless. The shield of light, its barrier meant to repel calamity, shattered upon impact, crumbling into countless fragments that burst outward and scattered into the far distance until they vanished from sight. The mountain continued to fold in on itself as though it had never truly been rock. When the prow finally hit the ground, the whole ship lurched, swerved downward with a loud groan, and slammed flat with a deafening bang. It came to rest lying level on the earth, so strangely poised that from afar it looked as if it were still sailing, only now its sea was land. This was no ordinary craft. It was frighteningly long and tall. Its length was nearly 1 kilometer, and its height exceeded 170 meters. Seen from a distance, it resembled a small mountain that had decided to take the shape of a ship. The entire hull was dark green, and it was primarily wooden, yet no one present could determine what kind of tree the timber had come from. A wooden ship, resisting the savage pressure and tearing force of the void? How could such a thing be acceptable to common sense? No one could say how many years it had drifted within the void. The flag that should have flown at the bow was already gone, completely destroyed, leaving behind nothing but a bare flagpole, stripped and mute. And there were several holes punched into the hull, wounds that looked like they had been carved by external bombardment. If those holes had been blasted open while the ship was inside the void, perhaps one could accept it. But if the ship had already suffered bombardment before it ever entered the void, then that thought was truly chilling. Whose strength could be so outrageous as to damage a vessel that even the void itself could not destroy? And what kind of destructive power would be required to leave such scars? The more one considered it, the more the second possibility seemed likely. After all, if the void truly had the capability to blast holes in this ship's hull, how could it have stopped at only a few? It would have torn the entire ship apart. The void was not known for mercy, nor for leaving a couple of holes as a reminder. It devoured, it shredded, it erased. And yet this ship remained. It lay there in silence. Its arrival had stirred chaos, but now it was eerily quiet, like a sleeping relic. The hull had once gleamed, yet that luster had dimmed, fading until it looked almost ordinary. Anyone ignorant of the truth might have believed a terrible tsunami had flung this ship inland from some distant sea and abandoned it here. Even the oppressive pressure had weakened greatly. It still made people uncomfortable, like an invisible weight pressing on the chest, but it no longer carried that agonizing force that made cultivators vomit blood. For a brief moment, every gaze burned with the same fever. Because the conclusion was unavoidable. If this ship could pass through the void without being destroyed, then the ship itself was a treasure beyond measure. If it could be dismantled and its materials used for refining, who could guess how many high-grade spirit tools might be forged from such wood? And if the hull alone was already so precious, then what of whatever might be hidden inside? At that thought, who still cared about continuing the battle outside? Like hungry wolves scenting fresh blood, everyone surged toward the great ship. They tried to leap onto the deck and enter through the cabin doors above, but they soon discovered something that made their hearts pound harder. They could not reach the deck at all. It was only around 170 meters high, yet it might as well have been a heavenly cliff. No matter how high they jumped or how they flew, they were always short by just a little. Always. They could not land on the top of the ship. Even shattering void-tier cultivators found the same result. That failure did not discourage them. It ignited them. Because if even shattering void-tier could not step onto the deck, then this was no mere relic. This was a true treasure, one that would transcend everything they understood. Something that, even in the immortal realm, would make countless beings fight tooth and nail for possession. But if the deck could not be reached, then what about those holes in the hull? Someone tested the idea, slipping into one of the openings, and entered smoothly, without resistance. Excitement exploded through the crowd. Others rushed to follow, funneling into the wounds in the ship's side like ants pouring into a cracked jar. If there truly was some godly artifact within, it might overturn everything in an instant. It might immediately turn the tide of the battle itself. "Your Majesty!" The 8 kings called out together, their eyes snapping toward Madu Bao as one. "Let's go in to take a look," Madu Bao answered, nodding with decision. He had tried, moments earlier, to block the 5 great sects and the 1,000 corpse sect from entering. But the moment he approached the great ship, his power vanished, dissolving like mist. Whatever authority his strength carried outside meant little here. Now, no one's battle prowess mattered the way it had before. The key point was simple and terrifying. This ship could change everything. Madu Bao turned his head, gaze locking onto Ling Han. "Tanned, brother, what about you?" Ling Han gave a calm nod, as if he had already weighed the heavens in his palm. "I will go in by myself." "Good." Madu Bao did not argue. He left the 1,000 elite troops behind, then led the 8 kings into the ship through one of the holes in its hull. Ling Han, meanwhile, summoned his own companions. From the Black Tower, he brought out Zhu Xuan, the rabbit, and the gold-seeking rat, and he told them what had just happened, how the ship had emerged, how the world had shaken, and how the battle outside had been swallowed by the gravity of greed and fate. The rabbit's eyes grew round with disbelief, its entire body practically trembling with excitement. "Treasure! This is the biggest treasure in the world!" it cried, awe shining through its usual arrogance. Then it thumped its chest as if swearing an oath to the heavens. It insisted it could confirm the truth of it. This was a treasure, even in the immortal realm. And it pressed the point without mercy. Ling Han must obtain it. The gold-seeking rat was even more frantic. It practically threw itself at the ship, scrambling up and clinging to the hull, then gnawing at it with all the devotion of a starving beast. It wasn't biting randomly. It had locked onto a rivet embedded in the hull, and was using every shred of effort to pull it out. But the moment its mouth latched onto the ship, something went wrong. It could not use its ability at all. Not even a trace. The rat's panic skyrocketed. It squealed in agitation, spitting out rapid, loud zzz sounds as if cursing the heavens for placing a feast before it, and then sealing its jaws. The most maddening torment for a creature like it was simple. Delicious food was right in front of it, yet it couldn't eat it. Ling Han had never seen the gold-seeking rat this agitated. Even if someone placed level 10 precious metal before it, metal that could drive countless cultivators mad, the rat would not have behaved with such desperate hunger. This alone revealed something startling. The value of this ship exceeded even level 10 precious metal. And when Ling Han considered it, the logic was unavoidable. Otherwise, how could a wooden hull have resisted the pressure of the void? "Come," Ling Han said, voice steady. "We shall go in to take a look." And he stepped forward first. Hu Niu tilted her head, her expression caught between curiosity and confusion. She reached out and grabbed Ling Han's clothes, allowing him to pull her along as though she were a child clinging to an elder brother while crossing a dangerous street. Then she suddenly blurted, "Weird. Niu feels like she has seen this big ship before." Those words made Ling Han's heart stir. "Is that so?" he asked, immediately alert. "Think carefully. Where and when did you see it?" Hu Niu's face fell. She searched her mind, then answered with open disappointment. "Niu can't remember." Ling Han smiled, warmth returning to his eyes. He patted her little head and soothed her gently. "It's all right. Once inside, you will see more things. Perhaps that will help you remember." Hu Niu's origins were never ordinary. She was strange, incomparably formidable, and terrifying in a way that did not match her size or her childish mannerisms. If she truly had some connection to this mysterious ship, it would not be impossible at all. They chose a hole in the ship's hull and stepped through, entering what seemed to be the lowest floor. Instantly, darkness swallowed them. It was not normal darkness. It was so deep that even they could not see clearly. That was extraordinary. Because cultivators at their level should still be able to make out shapes even in environments far darker than this, relying on sharpened senses and cultivated sight. For their vision to fail, there had to be some kind of restriction within this place, something that interfered directly with perception. Ling Han raised his hand and shifted his origin power, transforming it into a fire attribute. A blazing flame flared to life on his palm. Yet even then, the light did not travel far. It was as if an invisible force pressed down on the brightness itself, suppressing it, preventing it from spreading. Still, it helped enough. They could at least see within a range of more than 3 meters. They stood inside a cabin, and it was completely empty. There was nothing. No supplies, no furnishings, no trace of life. The most reasonable explanation was that the hole they'd entered through had been ripped open by the rushing force of the void, and whatever had once been inside had been smashed, torn away, or destroyed. That was easy to understand. The outer defenses would naturally be the strongest, while the interior would be much more fragile. Exactly like the Great Mountain Protection Formation, which could look imposing from outside yet crumble within once breached. They opened the hatch and stepped out into a very long walkway. Cabins lined both sides. One after another, they pushed open the doors, searching each room in turn. Every cabin was empty. Empty in a way that felt deliberate, almost insulting, like the ship had been looted clean by robbers who left nothing behind. They continued down the walkway for a while until they reached its end. Yet there was no staircase leading to an upper floor. With no way forward, they turned around and started back. In any case, the hull was only about 1 kilometer long. Even if they walked back and forth a few hundred times, it wouldn't truly waste that much time. But when they were only halfway back, something appeared out of the darkness ahead, figures approaching them. 5 women. They were clearly not from the 5 great sects. They were not from the Thousand Corpse sect. And they were not from the Purple Moon Empire. Each woman held a spear tightly in her hands, and each wore battle gear forged from silver metal that caught what little light existed and reflected it in a bright, silvery radiance. Ling Han's thoughts tightened like a drawn bowstring. Could they be the ship's crew? Yikes. Did that mean they weren't dead yet?